So hello and welcome to the Showrunner panel presented by the Animation Guild Writers Craft Committee. Thanks for coming, everyone. I'm Cassie Soliday, a volunteer with the Guild, and today I'm joined by a panel of wonderful executive producers. AC Bradley, Niki Lopez, Rick Suvalle, and Geoffrey Thorne. And just so you know, there will be time at the end for a Q&A. So if you have any questions, please send them through in the Q&A box. If you put them in the chat, there's a chance we might miss it. So to kick us off, let's go around to each panelist. Tell us what shows you've ran and some background, like how you got started in animation and how you became a showrunner. Let's start with Geoffrey, then Niki, AC, and Rick.
Well, I got started pretty easy. I tried to submit some stuff to the old Justice League cartoon. They rejected me aggressively, and I thought that was it for me. I literally gave up completely after that. I was like, if I can't sell the Justice League, there's no shot. And I was at a comic book convention. Dwayne McDuffie, who was one of the co-EPs, one of the EPs on that, had read an independent comic of mine. And he's like, hey, Geoff Thorne. I'm like, hey, giant Dwayne McDuffie. What's up? He's like, so read your comic, you're funny. I was like, no, I'm not, you're funny. He's like, I'm witty, you're funny. And he says, have you ever thought about pitching Ben 10? At the time he was running Ben 10, one of the multiple Ben 10s that have existed. And I said, no, because you kept rejecting my pitches for Justice League. Why would I think for a minute that I would submit to your stupid Ben 10 show? Of course I didn't. It's like, you're an idiot. I want to hear 10 pitches from you in the next month. And I was like, oh, okay. So I pitched him a bunch and I sold a few and I ended up writing on Ben 10 and they kept asking me back and I kept saying yes. And, 10 years later, among many other things, at some point, some very shady CIA-like executives from Marvel said, hey, we're doing a show that we can't tell you the name of or what the subject matter is, and you can't mention this meeting to anyone. Would you like to work for us at some point? And I was like, I can't answer any of that because I don't know. Did you even say anything just now? A month later, after 5 meetings, it turns out it was Black Panther's Quest. And I said, what are you, stupid? You should have opened with this. I would have said yes right away. It's the freaking Black Panther. What's wrong with you? And so that's how I ended up running Black Panther.
Awesome. Hey everyone, I'm currently show running a Nick Jr. preschool action adventure show by the name of Santiago of the Seas. I began my animation journey as an intern almost 11 years ago, more or less, at Nickelodeon. And how did I become a showrunner? It all stemmed from that desire of wanting to tell a story and really just an overall sense of why not? Why not take that leap of faith? Because Nickelodeon has an open door policy to pitching, I took that chance and here we are.
Oh, is it me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm AC or Ashley Bradley. I'm currently, I hate the word showrunner because it sounds like a dictatorship. And I think in animation, we more or less like are collaborators with the directors and storyboard artists. And I'm an executive producer and a writer titles because those are the ones that appear on screen. But I'm running Marvel's What If, which has been amazing. I got my start in animation as a live action writer. I know, by the way, yeah, Marvel is fun with their secrets. I was doing live action and Mark Guggenheim called me up and I was actually in New York City at the time on the subway. And he went, I have a show going, it's animation. Would you want to jump on? And my first thought was, no, I'm not a family kiddie writer. I do stuff blowing up, I do genre. And he went, this is genre. This is, I guarantee you can blow up shit. And it was Troll Hunters and it was great. We did 52 episodes. There was a spinoff and it was a weird situation where I campaigned for the job to be the head writer, to be the writer in the room every day. And although I didn't always have the title, you were acting as a producer. And it was getting that. Making a prestige animation show for Guillermo del Toro was a trial by fire, but a great one. Wow. And then after my appendix exploded and I left, I went on to Marvel, which has been great.
Hi, I'm Rick Suvalle, and I'm currently a first-time co-showrunner on a new DreamWorks show that I created. Before that, I created and produced a new version of Thomas and Friends that will be coming out this fall. And I got my start in live action a long time ago on Pamela Anderson's VIP, which was really a live action cartoon because we had characters who would just pull bazookas out of their back. And so we got a good start that way. And I got into animation kind of full time about 6 years ago. Before that, I was writing a lot of really bad sci-fi channel movies, really bad Hallmark channel movies in between. But I got into animation full time about 6 years ago, and I guess I became a showrunner by creating my own show, and that's how that happened.
So many great stories within all that, I bet. But next, what does a day as an executive producer typically look like for you? Whoever wants to answer first can go.
A good day or a bad day?
Anything you want to share?
I think it's just, to me, an average busy day when we're not in a pandemic and you're in the middle, like knee deep in a production, is a mixture of this episode needs revisions. This episode needs breaking. This episode, the writer is off because they're off writing the script. You got to be in the edit bay. Don't eat all the candy in the edit bay. Have lunch at some point. Watching animatics. Looking at the pretty design pictures is the nicest part because I'm not an artist. So I'm always like, oh, it's pretty pictures. And looking at final animation because I'm not an animation wizard. So I'm always leave that to the head of animation. And I'm like, it looks great. It looks great. This is the end product. Okay, I'm going to go back over here and cry because I've got studio notes to do before I go to bed.
That's new Marvel. Old Marvel was not like that.
Oh.
Old Marvel was much more cloistered. My day was very similar to that in a lot of respects, but it was sometimes an uphill battle to get me and the head director in the same room at the same time. And we didn't do rooms, we did summits. So we would have 3 or 4 days of me and the writers brainstorming, and that would be discrete. That's all that day would be. And then there would be the days you're talking about where we're looking at animatics, giving notes, taking notes, having audio meetings. My favorite days were always the records once those started, because then you're just sort of sitting at a radio play. Mm-hmm. But yeah, roughly similar with this one provision that you get to talk to your counterpart without a giant sort of UN negotiation to make that happen.
Now, my favorite thing about animation is when everyone just hangs out in the edit bay revising the animatic, where it's the director, sometimes there's an artist in there, it's the editor, and you're literally pitching lines and rewriting it. I mean, early on in What If, our studio exec, Brand Winderbaum, who's one of our producers, who's amazing, it was his first foray into animation, and he was like, wait a minute, we're rewriting the scene? Like you're punching the lines while we're sitting here? I'm like, yeah. And it's like, yeah, like, because the editor, paused it and he went, hey, Ashley, do you want to go up and give us your best Peggy Carter? I was like, yep, let me go. And I was like, this is the fun of it. Like, this is the perk of animation, is that it's instead of hanging out with the cool art kids and the AV kids all day.
Thanks.
Cool, I guess I'll jump in. My show kind of launched in the pandemic, so it's not kind of the typical thing that we've been used to in the past. I mean, I've worked on shows that did not start in a pandemic, but my typical day is I wake up, I work out, I shower on most days, and then I just jump into Zooms. We use a partner studio in France, so 3 days a week I've got a call at 9 a.m. where we launch a storyboard, we have an art meeting, we go over scripts with them, with the directors. And then the rest of the day is, going over animatics and casting decisions and listening to music. And somewhere in there, I try and find some time to write, because I am also the head writer on the show. So that's a 40-hour job unto itself. And so it's just hard to find that time and squeeze that in, but somehow it happens.
I guess I'll add on to that experience. Yeah, it's waking up and checking emails, answering them, hopping on a bunch of Zoom meetings. Being a showrunner means managing various groups simultaneously. And it's interesting. I hear so many people want to create shows. They want to show run, but often they forget that you have to exercise these management skills. You have to have the ability to help guide your team to a certain objective. You have to find time to support them and really empower them. Yeah, it's really cool to create a show, create your project, but it's even cooler to guide a team.
It's a great segue into the next question. What's important to keep in mind when building your team? And I'd also love to hear how communicating with the various roles might differ, like the way you talk to your network execs may be different than the way you talk to your artists or producers or writers or the service animation studio.
Okay. Building the writing team is probably the most fun. I personally want a wide cross section of different kinds of writers. I do primarily adventure stuff. Like Ashley, I like to blow stuff up, and I'm that guy. But you shouldn't have a room full of just that guy. So what you want to do is pull from as many different disciplines as you can pull from. I had live action people, I had animation people, I had people from the sort of kiddie side of animation. I'm like, forget about that. You're going to come over here and you're going to, you're going to have superheroes and James Bond type stuff. Would you like to do that? Because you can write. A writer's a writer, but you're sort of putting together your Mission Impossible team. So you're literally sitting there with this dossier and you're like, okay, that guy's good with explosives. He's in, like that. Dealing with the executives, again, was very unusual for me coming from live action. Old Marvel, I don't know how new Marvel works, but the executives were in the room with us, in the writers' room with us, which the writers were all like, who are they? Why are they here with us? I'm like, just pay no attention. And, but for me, it was a little bit, at first, a bit unsettling. And you just learn to roll with it because each company is different. In terms of wrangling the different departments, some of the people on this have built their own shows. I was brought into something that was a project that already existed. So there were a lot of things that were organizationally already, I didn't have to set a lot of that stuff up. It was a lot more liaison type stuff. And that's it. Dealing with execs is like dealing with anything. They are your counterparts on another side of the boat. And treat them with respect, and theoretically they will treat you with respect. They don't know what we do and we don't know what they do, but we should have respect for the other person's discipline, that their concerns are valid, not just there to screw with whatever your beautiful artistic day is. I think some creatives who get to the point of running a show have an automatically adversarial relationship with their executives, and I don't know why that is. I'm not that guy, I'm not like that, but I can see how it would develop. I recommend against it because the way I always say it is, you're going to win every argument because it's your money and it's your show, but you're going to have the argument because it's my job to make sure you have the argument. You know.
Just to jump on that, like you do when you staff a room, you're looking for like who's going to be my comedy people, who's going to be my family people. I also now look for my diplomat. And on previous shows, it was like my writing assistant and then a staff writer. On What If, my writing assistant became a staff writer. And it's like, it's the person that knows everyone on the crew, who knows where the bombs, the IEDs are, like when something's about to, go off. My script coordinator, writing assistant, right-hand man, he knows everything that's happening in production at times better than I do, because he's the interface of all the departments. And he can be the one that be the ambassador for the script and like also field the questions when design has a question that he's like, he knows the answer to it. He's like, I've been in the room the entire time. I can tell you what X house should look like. And he handles it. Like having a person that you can be like, go sit for 2 hours of design, please, because I don't have the time. Like having literally a room ambassador. Also someone to keep track of all the birthdays.
Gosh, in terms of what I keep in mind when building the team, I guess it's the big thing is chemistry and in a overall passion for the show. I'm always looking for people that are excited to come on board the show, and they don't see it as, oh, this is another job for my resume. Sometimes there's individuals that maybe their work isn't, the best there is, but because they're so passionate and dedicated towards the show, they push themselves forward and they get to that optimal place. So yeah, that's
Yeah, I think for me, in terms of the non-writing aspect of the team, like my show's at DreamWorks, so they have an infrastructure. They really help you build your team. It's like, here's 2 voice directors, pick one. It's not like I'm going out and searching. I mean, I came in with a couple of people to help score, but it's out of like a blind test of 20 people, and casting choices and stuff like that. But when it comes to the writing room, I'm the same way. I really want a diverse room, different voices. My show is a girl power show. I am not a girl, so I have stacked the deck in terms of having a lot of female voices in the room to kind of really bring that part of the show to life. And as for talking to people differently, I don't think I really do, because I feel like TV is a team sport. Everybody's an integral part. It doesn't matter what position, if they're the production coordinator, the script coordinator. I mean, my script coordinator knows more about the show than I do. It's like he knows where the bodies are buried, and so so that's a really important thing. And I think the misconception is for people is also that like the showrunner is the boss, the network and the studio is the boss, and you really have to serve them. And so I think and it's not that you talk different to the executives, but they are kind of the boss. And so there is, I think, like Geoffrey hit it on the head, in terms of you really want to have a good relationship with those people. You want to have a mutually respectful one. And then, if you have that, then they're willing to take a flyer on your crazy ideas sometimes. I mean,
That's a fact.
Exactly. And if you have the adversarial one, it's like they're going to shut stuff down. And so, and I do think it is, and it's not even a game. It is about respect, because I think Geoffrey's right again about how it's like, we don't quite know what their jobs entail. They don't totally know what our jobs entail, but we have to find that place in the middle. And, and sometimes how it is. You find the note beneath the note. Sometimes they don't know how to say the writing thing, but if you sit back and you take a moment, you're like, okay, I get what they really want done here, And so I think, I think it's, like I said before, it's a team sport and everybody's important. And the last thing I think any of us want to do is like throw our weight around. That's a last resort thing, that you ever want to do. And so I really, it's something you just never want to do.
Yeah, I try to say yes as much as possible. Most of the requests from the other side are things that I'm like, that doesn't hurt the story. Sure, her outfit can be blue. I don't know why you want that, but fine, or no elephants. Somebody at the top hates elephants. How about rhinos? Are rhinos okay? Yeah, rhinos are great, but no elephants. Like, okay. So that when you do have to say no to something, or at least forcefully push against it, there's not this sense of, oh, anything we say, this guy's going to say no to it because we're stupid executives and they're the genius creatives, and why are we wasting his time? Mm-hmm. You want them to feel like you're a team. It's a team sport. It is a team sport. It's easy to say and people don't want to believe it, but it just is. There's too many working parts. And I like to think everybody has what I call their place of power. Mm-hmm. I'm going to put quotes around this. Even the actors, who are in theory the last part of this, this equation, even they should have some like, wait a minute, hold up, what? And you should stop and pay attention, because they're also a professional in an arena where you don't exist, right? Things that look great on the page and were funny in the writer's room, the actor has to make it work. And they're like, this car does it need the eighth wheel? Do we need the eighth wheel? Well, we love the eighth wheel. Yeah, but I've got to drive it. You want to listen to the person who has to drive the car as much as you listen to the person who financed the building of the car. They're like equal. So
I love that metaphor. This is also enlightening. So for those of you who have experiences in live action, what are the similarities and differences you found in the production process?
Oh my God.
You know,
Please,
CGI.
please.
You know, CGI and how it's used. I just came off a stint where I was rewriting a project on set, and it was like everything's on fire, but it's okay, and we're doing rewrites, and it was like any other production. Like there's just like, you know, the hammer's coming down on you, and there's a lot to get done. And I was with one of the directors, and he's like, "You're not scared?" I went, "Nope." And he's like, "Why aren't you scared?" I was like, "You've never sat on a small couch in an editorial of Guillermo del Toro and had him turn to you and go, 'What happened to this episode?'"
Oh my God.
That is pressure. And when you go, "I don't know, but I will fix it by the end of the week, sir." I was like, live action animation, there is differences in production, but at the end of the day, you're telling a story. So the skills travel over. And I do think because animation is so much more collaborative, like I walked in on a project, I wasn't there from day one. I'm coming in on day one of shooting, and it's like, here's the team. These are the problems. These are the solutions we're trying to figure out. And it's just finding all the answers and moving forward. And it was actually a great experience. And I think I got enjoyment out of it because I was like, yep, been here, done this. Let's see what we can do together. I actually think animation showrunners are probably the wave of the future.
I had just come off of a live action show before running with Black Panther, which I was surprised they asked me, to be honest with you. As much as I've done animation, I was almost exclusively live action prior to that. And there are plenty of great things. There's no sick actors. You're never going to lose a set. You're never going to lose a location. The budget is the flat budget, but you could be just as easily in a desert, you know, in Arizona as on Mars. It's literally fantastic in that regard. There were a couple of structural things that I had wished the animation side did that we do on live action. There are a couple of positions that have the same names that aren't the same position in animation. But again, I was working at old Marvel. I don't know how things work at new Marvel. And since that's my only experience running an animated series, I have nothing to compare it to. So there were a couple of walls I would bump into, like, well, why does it, oh God, I forgot you guys don't do this. All right. If we had this position, could we not do this? Like, oh, you need to talk to Phil about that. I'm like, why don't we just have this person? We don't need that. I'm like, we kind of do. But that was really it. It was much more casual, far fewer ego issues. I find most of the things that go wrong in a live action show have to do with ego conflicts. Money and ego conflicts. Money is just, like I said, losing a location, or someone is injured, or it's always time management versus budget, right? And then you have the variable of an actor's having a crap day, or they're not the nicest person you thought they were when you met them, and like 3 episodes in, they're really acting like a jerk, but you're stuck with them. You don't have any of that in animation. If anything, I found the actors, that aspect of it, to be, they were the most filled with camaraderie. It was almost like joining a repertory company. Like they all knew each other. No one was undercutting anybody. There was no big giant star attitude to deal with. You know, I'm not leaving my dressing room unless, none of that. You know, and it doesn't happen often on the live action side, but it happens often enough that you feel it when it's not there. So I definitely felt those bits.
I find them similar on a macro level. Like, you know, if, you know, instead of going on a location scout, someone's throwing you 3 drawings of, you know, an old water tower that you can choose from. And, if, you know, instead of having to meet with the wardrobe department, so you're meeting with the art director in terms of what they put on the thing. And I think, you know, the big difference for me, though, is, which I love about animation, is the closer relationship you have with the director. Because on live action, you've got a cinematographer that's going to make sure the look stays the same between episodes, but the director kind of does their own thing, and you fix whatever they mess up in post and stuff like that. But you know, in animation, you're sitting there, you're talking about angles, you're talking about, you know, small little moments. And that's what I really love. I love that aspect of animation, which I did not get in live action at all. And then when I did live action movies, you know, the writer is the lowest person on the totem pole. So you don't even get invited to the set. So that's a big difference too.
How dare you come to the set? What do you mean? Who are you? What's your job?
I paid my own way to get here. Come on.
Sir, no public. The public is not allowed on the set, sir. No, we said the public. The public is not allowed on the set.
And Niki, I believe you're the only one on the panel who came from the art side of animation. So can you speak into how that's affected the way you lead your team?
Sure. It's interesting because I am coming from both the production and design side of animation. As a designer, and due to my prior experience as a production assistant, I was always very conscious of communication, organization, meeting deadlines, to better serve the team as a whole. I would think, well, how can I make this easier on the unsung heroes that are the productions team? Now, as a showrunner, I want to make sure that production gets what they need to move the pieces in a timely fashion, and that the designers feel sufficiently supported to deliver what is needed and make space for them to feel that they can pitch ideas to better serve the story. Basically, I never want anyone on my team to feel like they're another cog in the machine. I want everyone to feel that they are essential to making the show work.
I love that. The better you treat people, the better they want to work. So yeah. That's awesome. So to everyone on the panel, what have you learned about giving notes throughout the production? Like, how do you keep it constructive, and how do you figure out what you want fast?
Sorry, I was gonna say the best piece of notes I got, advice, and was when I was about to like start running a room, was there's gonna be times you read a script, and this is true, and you'll read a scene, and it's not the way you pictured it. It's not the way you would have written it. It's not the jokes you would have put in, but it works and it's good. And that's when you go, thank you, and you keep moving forward. Like I think a lot of new showrunners or just even seasoned showrunners have this thing of like, this isn't the way I would write it, so now I've got to go rewrite it. And that's the kiss of death. It's like, if this works and it's good, keep moving forward, because also overly rewriting your writers is how you burn them out. Because if they don't feel like their stuff is actually going to get on screen, they don't want to write the stuff.
They won't come back. You'll lose your writers.
Yeah.
Wait, what was the question? What's the question?
It was how do you keep your notes constructive and figure out what you want?
Yeah. Theoretically, especially with the writing side, you're working all that out as a process of sort of building the show. So as Ashley points out, you're almost waiting for a script to come in before you see how the writer realized everything we already discussed. So notes in that case, depending on where you are in the production process, early on notes can be the sort of languid, casual, well, you know, take another run at it. This wasn't exactly right. We'll get back to you in a few days, whatever. About the middle of production, fine, it's fine. I'll just fix, right? Because you don't have time, the monster's after you at that point. So, and I feel like in management, one of the things that's difficult is a lot of writers are not geared for the management position they suddenly find themselves thrust into. It is a completely different skill set, and some people are good with folks and some people are not that great with folks. I try to give notes the way I would hope to receive notes. Mm-hmm. So I've gotten a slew of crappy notes over the years, and the person's giving them doesn't realize they're giving you crappy notes. And they don't understand, you know, we all say the note behind the note. They all heard the phrase, they have no idea what it means. They still give you the crappy note. Also, they may have had a crappy day up in the executive tower. They're coming down to deliver some edict that they didn't understand from their boss, but now they have to make us do it, whatever it is. They say some ridiculous thing that we're like, why would it find fine. Yes, we'll do that. We're not going to do it. We just say, yes, we're going to do it. And then they leave. But you don't ever want to be that person who makes the creative or whoever go, fine, we'll just do it. You don't want that look on their face. And since you've had that look on your face, you try to figure the best way to deliver it that wouldn't have made you want to go pull your hair out. And you want to get a team that's like, a lot of it is in the building of the team. The elements that you don't control are you sort of learning to be a diplomat. The elements you do control, if you set your team up right at the beginning, there's very little of that going forward, because as the stresses increase, the people step up rather than, oh dear God, there's so much stress, I have to fold now. You're the boss, you do it. You don't want a team like that. You want a team that's like, what can I do?
Yep.
Like, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? Because that's how you were, or you wouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was the same way. I mean, having gotten some really bad notes, I remember doing a movie for Sci-Fi, and the producer just wrote, "This scene is effing stupid." That's all he wrote to me. And I was like, fortunately, I was able to talk to him about that scene later. He didn't realize his assistant had just forwarded the notes and didn't go through them first. But so he was a little embarrassed. So that at least felt good. But having gotten those type of notes that are not quite that bad, I really want to give notes in a different way. So I kind of, for me, it's like, I want to, when I give a note, I don't want to give a note that just says, do this. I want to say, do this because this will make, this is what will strengthen the scene. This is why we're doing this. And I also want to say, I want to do it. I mean, I'll put smiley faces in my notes because I really just want, I want someone to want to make the change and get behind it and keep it happy, keep it going. Because like I said, it's like, I didn't get that. And I mean, I was on shows where I couldn't even get like a good job from my showrunner or story editor. And you're like, I just want some kind of validation that I'm doing a good job. So I'll even do the mea culpas in there saying, I know I told you to do this, but now I'm going to tell you to go the other way. Yes, I know. Blame me, hate me. I mean, I really try and keep it light because I want them to want to do it and understand. So that's at least my technique. And that goes across more than just writers. If you're giving animatic notes, I kind of want to over-explain because I started giving notes saying, just change this. But it's like that, but they want to know why, and especially when I'm dealing with a foreign country too, where it's like, I need to kind of over-explain myself and say, but I do think it's important for across the board to explain why you want to do every note, and then people will get on board.
Yeah. I'll have to be the continuing echo, much like Geoffrey and Rick, that when notes are given, at least I prefer to do it from a place of empathy, being a little bit careful with how I voice things, because if I'm gonna just say, this is unacceptable, then I'll probably make my team member feel absolutely deflated and not very encouraged to step up to the challenge. So yeah, it's, I like to ask questions. I like to ask, well, why was this approach in this certain way? And then, I find an avenue to be like, that's very interesting, but how about we try this, for example? I like to leave room for collaboration and a conversation to better improve the product, I suppose.
Great, thank you. Without going too deep into specifics, can each of you share the most difficult hurdle you faced as an EP and how you overcame it?
Hard pass.
Fair.
I cannot answer that question.
I guess I'll dive into the pool of sharks. Personally, I think it's starting off with Santiago. We started off in a bi-coastal setup, and that was extremely challenging, mainly because of issues in communication. Now for season 2, we've dwindled down the team to just the West Coast team. So we no longer have to deal with the same challenges we encountered in season 1. I guess time just allowed for a solution to present itself.
I'll answer vaguely as possible. I was in a position where I would get yelled at if the directors and storyboard artists blew the budget in the animatics. I was responsible for an entire show, but my title didn't reflect it. And it was a toxic environment. And when I finally got the courage to be like, oh, I gotta go, I left. And even the studio was trying to find another show for me, I was like, I can't. It was very much a turning moment for me because I realized I had to start trusting myself and trusting that I'll find an environment that will treat me well. And I will say, I don't know how old Marvel was. New Marvel's been really nice. They've been real nice.
That's what I hear, and I hate you all for that.
Like, my favorite story was like early on in our first season, I kept asking for like the box and the rules and like my budget and like all the stuff that I was used to, like having like all these rules on me. And my line producer took me aside and he went, I was told to treat you nicely. He's like, Ashley, go have fun. He's like, they want you to have fun. You got this job because you wanted to have fun. And I was like, okay, sir.
Well, yes, now I really have to find all of you and kill you because no. But old Marvel wasn't awful. It wasn't awful at all. I had a good time, but there were things. Largely, it came down to the friction of them keeping the departments separate. I'll be specific. Black Panther's Quest was being made at the same time the Black Panther film was still in production. And the biggest hurdle I had, which was both a blessing and it was both a curse at the beginning and ultimately a blessing, was please tell me what's going on with the movie. Clearly you've decided you want this show to sort of tie in some way with this movie you're making. Be great to know who's in that movie. Be great to know what the cast is. Any plot point you'd like to share, we would love to know. A location, any location. We would love, because maybe, I don't know, we could incorporate it while we're making our show simultaneously. No, that's none of your business. We don't want leaks. And I was like, but I've signed, you saw that mountain of NDAs that you make everyone sign before they enter the building every day, right? The retinal scan and the holographic badges so you can get from section to one section to the other. And please tell me something about this motion picture you're making. Nothing, crickets. So at the beginning, I was extremely frustrated by that because you're going to do something wrong automatically. You have literally no idea, yeah. Right? And they were like, okay. And I was like, all right, well, then we're going to go this way. And then ended up, we got to make our own show, which nobody gets mad at the end of the day, because now I kind of don't have to check. They're just going to tell me if I veer too close to the wrong guardrail, which is not the way I preferred to work. I prefer to know what the rules are at the beginning so we don't waste time with the guardrails. But it ended up being its own unique thing. It literally is its own thing, which now I can be proud of and stand on and go, yeah, that's my style, y'all. That's how I roll, which is not what they would have gotten had they told us up front, these are the characters, this is the way it's going to play, these are the themes that are going to be addressed. All of that, if we'd known any of that, the show would have been completely different. So very frustrating and unpleasant initially, but ultimately a blessing and made us creatively free. So they win, they were right.
Yeah, my experience is like similar but different. Like Ryan Coogler read our script, our Black Panther. Yeah, and Chadwick Boseman did the voice. But I know
I'm going to kill you. I'm going to find you and kill you.
He was awesome. We had the problem. We kept walking into the movies left and right. Like we kept pitching stuff that was. I got to see Endgame early because I thought it was cruel after pitching Old Man Steve, and being told no. But our thing was then like it was the same thing of like, don't do anything you think could be in the movies. Go weird. Go big. It's animation. So we kind of got like the best of both worlds of like, here's all the secrets. Keep your mouth shut. And now go do everything that we would never do in a movie, like zombies.
Nope. I literally just hate you on principle. I'm sure you're a lovely person.
We have to get drinks one day and just have a.
Yeah, no, yeah, we definitely, yeah. Yes, for sure. Good God.
Rick, did you want to add anything? totally okay if you
I
don't.
will take the fifth on that one.
Okay, cool. So our last question before we get to the Q&A, how do you balance your personal life with the demands of work? Would also love to hear about how you manage your stress.
Play more video games to add on to the stress. I don't know. It's a relief outlet, I guess. Yeah. Currently playing Resident Evil, so it's like, oh, I'm done with the stress of work. Now I'm gonna stress myself running away from werewolves and vampires.
I think it's hard. I mean, I think it's hard to balance. I mean, it's like, because we're in the pandemic and we're at home, I think a lot of people tend to work even more because they just wake up and they walk over to the computer with their cup of coffee and they just start. And then it's like, then I realize, okay, my kids, we're done with dinner, and I just kind of walk back to my computer, and if there's still work to do, I just do it. And I would just get, and on the weekends, what are we doing? I'm just working. And so if we were not in the pandemic, I'd probably get yelled at for working all weekend, but nobody's bothering me. But I think that, pre-pandemic, it was about, giving myself deadlines, saying I'm done by dinner time, and like, and make sure the work gets done. I mean, you kind of have to force yourself to say, this is good enough, at times, you really do. I mean, since we have more time, I feel like I can be more of a perfectionist now. And I've been doing that. I probably shouldn't, but I'm easily working, I'm sure all of us are, 60 hours a week when we're really getting into it, especially if you're doing the writing part of it. And I do find, like, video games, for sure. I got an Oculus Quest during the pandemic, and it's like, if I can take a half hour, if there's a half-hour break, I put that thing on, I'm in another world. I don't have to think about politics. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I've got so I don't think about politics. I don't think about COVID. I don't think about work. I'm just lost for 30 minutes. And I'm like, that's what I need. I mean, that combined with some exercise and maybe a brisk walk, but it is hard to manage the time, for sure.
Yeah, all of that. I don't have kids, so I marvel at those who do, especially really young kids, how they juggle it all. Honestly, you should figure out for me, I just figured out when I'm in charge, I figure out what my best timing is. So, like, I like to be able to tell the staff, you're done at 5 or you're done at 6, don't worry about it, go home. And if there's anything left undone, it's my job as the showrunner to do that. That's why I'm making a lot more money than they are. Frankly, that's why I'm making a lot more money than they are. But even with that, 2 more hours, I have a life to go home to. If you're working to, what is it? Don't work to live. You know what I mean? Whatever that phrase is, don't live to work, work to live, right? You have to have a life, or what's the point? Literally, you have to have a life, an actual life. You'll look up and you won't have a life, and you won't be happy that you made all those cartoons. You just won't. You will want that life. So have it. Mm-hmm. The problem is sometimes you'll have a boss, a showrunner boss, who doesn't care about their life, and then you're hosed because they will make you stay till 2 a.m. And you just remember, when it's your turn, don't be that person. Just don't be that person. There's almost never an emergency in our business. Like, there's no life threatening, especially in animation. Nobody's going to die. Like, I literally have stuntmen blow up. Like, so, like, I've seen people get horribly hurt and taken to the hospital, or, terrible things can happen because of the nature of live action. And frankly, even then, the production only shuts down for a day, which is really horrifying. But in animation, how major could it possibly get? I think we tend to get myopic about the project. But, go out to dinner. Save time to really walk and play with that dog. Watch some stupid show with your kids that you would never watch and think is ridiculous and is made by your competitor who you wish would fail. Watch that show. Like, you have to have a life.
Yeah, I was just on set in production during a pandemic and pregnant, so I brought my 2 asshole cats with me. I was like, I'm going to do this if I'm going to be in Atlanta for 4 months. Alexi and Lucky are coming with me, and they're I think by my second week, everyone knew that I had 2 dick bag cats and already brought me dead mice. We had the whole story of they brought in a baby chipmunk. I've locked it in the laundry room. I need help. Jonathan from Marvel Production, thank you very much for your help, sir. We rescued that chipmunk.
Awesome.
But it was a story to tell that wasn't about production. It wasn't about the pandemic. And it was stress relief and watching 2 cats be complete dicks to each other. They're better than HBO.
Yeah, video games, comic books. If you're a foodie, be that. Go to those concerts. You know, literally leave work and go right to that concert. Like, take the hit in the morning. It's worth it. Like, feel a little bit bad for that first hour in the morning. It's okay. Like, go to the concert.
So happy to hear you all say that. That's so healthy. Okay, so thank you for answering all my questions. Now we're going to open it up to the attendees. So this is Q&A time. Remember, if you want your question answered, please put it in the Q&A box. We're going to try to get through all of these. So hang on just a moment. So Chris Gentile asks, what are the things that writers can do to make your job easier?
Understand that even though we might be the executive producer, the head writer, whatever the title is, we are still answering to a studio, a network, a Kevin Feige, a Guillermo, that we have a boss above us too. We all have a boss. And we're trying to make them happy as much as they're trying to, like, the writer's trying to make us happy. Like, it's not a, sometimes it's not a dictatorship. We're all like, not, we're all just trying to stay afloat, man.
No joke. I would say understand you're on a team and that the showrunner has a great many responsibilities of which you should not and are not aware, right? You should not be aware. It's a bad showrunner who makes you aware of all the crap they've got to deal with. You should not know any of that. But when they see your face, the absolute worst they should think of is that? Like, that should be the worst thing your showrunner thinks of you. What they really should think is, oh, thank God, right? Thank God Mike's here. Mike, could you come in here for a minute? Yes, I absolutely could. You know, just want to talk through this thing. I know it's not your job. Can you listen to this? Yes, I absolutely can. Like, embrace the concept of yes, because you don't know. You know, you may have an expertise you don't realize you've got, or an insight that no one else could give. But if you're thinking about it like, how can I advance my career? How can I do this for me over and over again? You're ultimately going to take the production down. You should be there. We serve at the pleasure of the president, including the showrunner who serves at the pleasure of another president, but you serve at the pleasure of the president. So understand that role and really embrace it. I did, and as a baby writer, so-called, I was there first, I was out last. Every time the boss looked up, I was sitting there, even if I didn't have any official work to do, just in case. You know, let them send you home. They should send you home. Go home. What are you doing here? Get out. Right? You should hear that a lot. That would be my advice.
Anyone else want to add anything? Oh, go ahead, Niki.
Be conscious of page count. Maybe don't write like 30 pages for an 11-minute episode. That will then require a lot of editing. Especially for season 2, what has really helped us a lot is having producers within the writer's room that are savvy of design constraints. Because what we were encountering a lot during season 1 was these the request for set builds and characters was beyond our budget. So then having to go, it was just a back and forth that took much longer than it should have. So having people in the room that are savvy of those parameters of what's feasible with the budget certainly helps a lot in being efficient with time and our resources, and what assets we can reuse. That's always super helpful.
Yeah, I agree. It's, you know, I mean, obviously you got to give the freelancers a pass on that kind of stuff, you know, but definitely staff writers should know the limitations. And also for me, the big thing is like formatting. If you want to get in good with me, it's about making the scripts kind of, if I use 2 dashes for a montage line, I don't want to have to do that myself. So it's really kind of study like the format of the show. I mean, I literally have people sometimes hand the script and they haven't even put a period at the end of the sentence. That just drives me insane. So
No.
if you're learning about the show, you're learning about the world by learning the Bible and stuff like that, but learn what the head writer is interested in seeing is important to me. I mean, obviously the content is extremely important too, trying to match the voices and all that kind of stuff. But I do appreciate when someone has mimicked my idiosyncratic format.
Yeah, that's from every show too. That varies from showrunner to showrunner. It is absolutely part of your job to figure out the style of your show and do that. Like, do that for real. Don't say, we did it like this on Hill Street Blues. Well, you're not on Hill Street Blues. So that's an old show from before the flood, kids. You don't remember that show, but old people like me remember that show.
So we kind of already covered David Tuber's question a little bit, like you all seem to have, lives outside of show running, but how many hours would you say you work per week? Like outside of the pandemic?
A lot.
60.
A lot. 60 is probably right.
Yeah.
I will work sometimes on weekends and I'll stay that, a couple of hours, or if it's travel time to get home. 60 is, I think, a good average. You're running the freaking show.
Yeah.
Like it's the equivalent of being given a startup. Like, I don't think people realize it's like being given a multi-million-dollar startup and you're in charge of it, or at least a large chunk of it. So it's going to require a lot more work than just writing scripts.
Yeah.
It does.
Agreed.
So Sammy Savos, I hope I got your last name right. They ask, if a person pitches a show that a network wants to buy, what would determine whether or not that person becomes the showrunner? And if they do not become the showrunner, what might their role be instead?
It seems like I'm talking a lot. I hope I'm not talking too much. It's variable. I don't know that there is a hard and fast rule. I think we've all seen people who've come out of college with some idea and they pitch the hell out of it and the network's like, okay, go make your show. And some of the people who've been quote unquote paying their dues are like, what the hell?
I'll help you hunt those people down.
Yeah, right, no joke. But generally, at least in my experience, I've sold a couple of shows that sadly have not gotten on the air, which I would have been the showrunner on prior to Black Panther, where I was just a writer who sold the show. I think that they feel like you've done it enough that you know a lot of the work that goes into making these things, and 2, that you have a vision that you're the person who needs to be driving. That part of the reason they're hiring you is that you brought them something essentially unique. They don't quite get it, but they know it's funny, or they don't quite get it, but they know that kids will love this, or the intended audience will love this. And since they don't quite get it, you should be driving. That doesn't always work out in the favor of the show. Sometimes that's a mistake. But you can get created by, you can get an executive consultant. Like, it really is sort of a case by case, at least in my experience. You can be given any title other than showrunner, other than executive producer. You could just be a staff writer on the show you created, and it'll still say created by, or developed with, or whatever, or not. Like, it really all depends on your deal. So
yeah, and because showrunner is not an actual credited title, that even if you get EP in your deal, it does not mean you are going to be the showrunner, and you might not find that out until the show goes forward and like, here's your showrunner, and you're like, oh,
wait, what?
Okay. So yeah, and I've had those kind of deals too, like ones that didn't get made, where it's like, well, it says EP or it says co-EP, and I've had deals the beginning of my career where it says created by, and you're going to get the honor of being story editor, and no producer title. And it depends on where you are in your career. That's an amazing thing to be, but, we all kind of dream about that EP title, and it's just, it can be elusive. So I think what Geoffrey said, it can be anything. I know people that have created shows and have gotten just the created by and have been, like Geoffrey said, staffed on their own show. So it really depends on the experience and who you're dealing with and who's making your deal. Lots of variables.
I would not look at things like the guys who made Game of Thrones, who apparently had never made any television ever, and were given the biggest production in the history of television. Sure, football in Europe. Do whatever you got to do, kids. That doesn't happen. That's why it's news. So don't look for that. Don't feel bad if that doesn't happen. That's so unusual. It's literally like Time Man of the Year unusual.
But do you have a lawyer
and,
negotiate your contract? Sorry.
Yes, for sure.
You always
But
need a lawyer.
remember, it's not really a job. I feel like people, because the term showrunner has been put into the media so much, that it seems like it's this desirable goal to get to as fast as possible. But honey, you are running a business. You are not just king writer in the writer's room. You are running a business. There are multiple departments. There's people above you and quote unquote below you. There's ancillary crap you've got to deal with. There used to be toy companies you had to negotiate with, like all kinds of crazy stuff that you have no training for. Do yourself a favor and move up a little bit. Go through, maybe start in the middle or whatever you want to call the bottom, but at least learn some of the cogs work before you decide you need to fly the rocket yourself. Like, I'm not saying turn it down if it's offered, because that would be moronic, but it isn't what you think it is. It just isn't. The other side of that door is not what you think it is. Not a golden ticket with Willy Wonka giving you the chocolate factory. It just is not that. It's a whole lot of a different kind of work.
So anonymous attendee asks, do you think studios consider writers more seriously for showrunner than artists? Any tips for artists or production people to prove their worth?
I'm gonna say yes, they tend to be honest, just from my experience. I feel like there is a certain greater weight that writers carry. My suggestion, and having come from an artistic background, my suggestion for all artists wanting to pitch show and get into show running, study screenwriting, read books, take classes, make sure you're super equipped so you have all the tools necessary to tell your story. So whatever writer is being given to you, they're there to support you and what you have to say. As a side note, I mean, even when it comes to certain fellowships, generally writing fellowships, there's a part where you have like a pitching workshop, but then the artist fellowship, not so much. And I've been, I'm probably going deeper into it than I should have, but one of the points that I brought up was artists too have stories to tell. So why don't we empower them? Let's provide workshops so that they have what they need to tell their stories. I hope more executives out there, development executives are keen on hearing the stories that artists and designers have to say. That's
unfortunate. I think the pendulum has swung. Initially, the way animation developed, it was entirely artist driven. And part of the reason the writers in the Animation Guild operate the way we do, I think at a detriment, is because it was initially so completely artist driven and the writers were sort of an afterthought. Let's throw in some structure and a few gags here and there. It was an entirely visual medium. And the pendulum swung so far the other way that I think you're right. A lot of voices who can think visually and tell the story theoretically with no dialogue whatsoever, but tell you an amazing story, are not getting the opportunity to pitch their things strictly because they came from sort of the wrong side of the tracks. I feel like the pendulum should swing to the middle and then just stay there. Just stay right there. So all the good stories can come through.
I want to add that I'm fortunate on my show that my co-showrunner comes from the art side of things, and it's just been amazing. And I feel like we complement each other so well because even just looking at animatics, I'm giving story notes, and I start to give some directing notes, but she's like, you can't cut the characters off on their arms on the shot. We need an A to B pose. We need but you know what? It's making it so much better. Our two complementary skills that we have with each other. And the great thing is if you look at like the Venn diagram of what we both do is the overlap is huge too, which is great because she's amazing at like casting and music. And so if I can't make it to record, she'll take over and get the same great performances that I have in my head and vice versa. So it's been an amazing marriage for me to have, on my first time showrunning, have someone that, I can lean on that from the art side that knows what's going on, so, I do, I have a focus on, on the writing side, obviously, but, we overlap in so much, and it's just been a great thing. And I know she's got, I think development stuff to create as well as an artist creating her own shows. So I think it's great, and I think
Primal
should do it. What's that?
Primal is a show without dialogue, so and it's fantastic. Like it's really fantastic. So hopefully there will be more shows like that. Will create more space for more shows like that. Not that they have to be without dialogue, but that the artist can come in and go, here's my show, and then we'll figure out how to make it work. Like I feel like there ought to be space for that, since it's such a visuals heavy medium in a different way than live action is.
So we only have about a little less than 5 minutes. So if we could go through a few more questions just really quickly to try to fit a few more in. So Josie Campbell asks, have you guys had to fire or let go, writers, artists, or any creatives because you realized they weren't a good fit for the show? And if so, how did you approach it?
I haven't fired anyone, but there'll be people I won't ask back.
Yeah.
I give everybody a shot to correct. You hire everybody in good faith. They turn in a script. You give them the notes. They do the notes. You go, okay. Script 2, you better get this right on the first pitch. Like in your head, you're like, and then if they don't, you just don't bring them back, and it sucks. It truly sucks.
Andy Garner Flexner asks, do you have any advice on writing for multiple seasons? Is it about making a compelling story that the studio wants to see more of, or should you write a flexible story for multiple seasons?
Usually, going into it, especially in animation, what your initial episode order will be, and then you break that up into, if we had 52, we broke it up into 4 seasons of 13. So in our mind, even though they were dropped slightly differently, we're doing 4 seasons of 13. The biggest thing is, don't wrap everything up at the end of your season. Try in your finale to blow yourself up, blow up your show in your last 10 minutes of your finale each season, because then you have somewhere to go. Don't put a freaking ribbon on it until you're walking out the door.
Okay, so Melissa Graziano Humphrey asks, what is the role difference between a showrunner and a show creator if those two positions are separate? I'd also like to add executive producer, because there's a couple other questions because they're so interchangeable, like what is the difference?
Well, I didn't create Spider-Man, so I do not have that title. I wish I did.
They have different titles because they're different gigs. In animation, I think supervising producer I had to fight to be called a supervising producer, even though at live action I was past that rank. Showrunner is a person who's running the show, right? They're not just running the writer's room. They're involved in all aspects of production. So you can be an EP, but only be a directing EP, or only being a writing EP. You're an EP, get all that money, but you're not the showrunner. So created by does not automatically confer showrunner capabilities. EP does not automatically confer that. That's something essentially the production company or the network, gifts you. You're the one we're going to trust to captain this ship, basically.
Yeah, I think it goes back to your other answer before, the showrunner creators and getting EP and not getting EP. I think it goes back to that. It's just many different versions of how you skin that cat. I have a friend who created one of the top comedy shows out there and wasn't even allowed on set, and, it's like, it just happens.
Oh, that's brutal. That's so brutal.
Pretty brutal.
Yeah. Yeah. There's not a lot of straight lines in our business is what it boils down to. Like you can sell the whole show. It's a beautiful thing. You're beautiful design. Everything's great. But for whatever reason, the guys on the other side of the desk don't feel confident that you can run it. You know, there's a person over here who they know can run it. So that's who they're going to trust with these millions of dollars they're about to lay out. I mean, you got to always remember, even the lowest end animated series cost millions of dollars to make. That's somebody else's money. So they got to trust that you're not going to burn it. That's it.
Well, thank you all for answering those questions. Unfortunately, we're out of time, so we're going to wrap up. So do you have anything to plug, social media, your current or upcoming projects?
Marvel's What If is this summer at some point. I don't actually remember the date, but I don't know if Marvel's going to spend any money on advertising it. But please watch.
My daughter is obsessed with What If, and it hasn't even come out yet. She is so into it. She is so excited. I'm just going to tell you, you already have a huge fan coming your way. So.
Ah, sweet. Well,
Yeah,
I hope
man.
she enjoys it. I hope we live up to the kids' expectations.
Just that shot of Loki, and I'm already in the front seat. I'm like, where's my show? I'm writing a Green Lantern comic book for DC Comics. Go out and buy it because I want to keep writing it. See, I'm even wearing the shirt. That's how much I love to freaking go buy Green Lantern. That's my plug. Go.
I guess watch Santiago of the Seas, 10:30 again on Nickelodeon. New episodes every Friday.
Awesome. I've got Thomas and Friends, All Engines Go, a new preschool Thomas TV show coming out in the fall on Cartoon Network and Netflix. And then I've got my current show at DreamWorks that will be out sometime in the future.
Thank you all for being on the panel, and thanks so much to everyone for joining us and for your time. This panel was recorded and will be posted along with some other videos that are now in like a training program resource library on the TAG website. So please be sure to check it out as it continues to grow. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having me.